Relationships are like people, I guess. They begin, they have adventures, they grow old, and they die. Me and Mo both made it to old age, but we let our friendship die way too young. And that was really stupid of us.
This is certainly one of those topics. It's a really touchy subject in this community. I'm not strictly discussing romantic relationships in Ace I'm just talking about the relationship we have in general. That could be anything, from the iconic duo of Phoenix and Maya, to Athena and Blackwell, or even Apollo and Spark Brushel. Because yes, Apollo and Spark Brushel have a relationship. I wanted to talk about something that's sort of been overlooked, and that's the relationship between the characters, and specifically how it changes the way we view them. I said this in my Apollo Justice Characters video, but I feel the need to establish something. The main characters in Ace Attorney aren't all that different from each other, solely because they're all designed to be relatable. Mia Faye, Phoenix Wright, Apollo Justice, and even Athena Sykes all share various similarities. What makes them different is the circumstances they're placed in and how they react to it. Let's look at Mia Faye. She's forced to deal with a crybaby character like Phoenix, and shows frustration and a lack of sympathy when he refuses to cooperate and begins to cry. I'd like to think this line resonates with people well. Through Mia's circumstance of dealing with an uncooperative defendant, we're given insight into her character. It shows us that she isn't someone who's content with putting up with or dealing with other people's shenanigans. It shows us she has a sassy and cold side, and she isn't going to tolerate someone else's BS. Notice how this aspect of her character is brought out simply through Phoenix existing. But that's not to say Mia is entirely a cold character. In fact, she chose to defend Terry Falls just through looking through his eyes and having some form of faith that he didn't do it. Something that simple. It adds another layer to her character, a different side of the coin. It shows us while she's stern and assertive, she does have a sympathetic side, and she really does care. She just has a different way of showing that she does. Whether that be her speech to Phoenix in believing in her, or refusing to help Phoenix to take down Godot. It might appear cold and rude, but the character of Mia Faye is blunt. There is no filter. She says exactly how she feels. And notice how we got all of that just from two characters existing, and the relationship she has with said characters. Let's compare this to Apollo Justice. It's the exact same circumstance. A love-struck defendant that needs to wake up and smell the coffee. But the big difference here is, Apollo doesn't handle the situation anything like Mia. He's taken advantage of and becomes overwhelmed by Walkie, and that's interesting, because then that tells me that Apollo is a character that's easily overwhelmed. This is something we wouldn't know as well as we do without the existence of a character like Walkie. I can say this with certainty, but if this was Mia in that situation, she wouldn't have let Walkie get the best of her. Again, exact same circumstance, but why was the result any different? The main characters are defined by their relationship with other characters and how they react to each other in different circumstances. In the confines of that example, Mia reacts differently to Apollo. It shows us a difference in the characters simply through their relationship with another. Relationships help define a character and provide different layers to them. I'm not saying every relationship should be entirely unique, but a majority of them should be. Apollo's relationship with Trucy is different from his relationship with Phoenix. Phoenix's relationship with Edgeworth is different from his relationship with Maya. Athena's relationship with Juniper is different from her relationship with Blackwell, but that's also what makes them different. Trucy's relationship with Apollo provides a brotherly layer to his character. It shows us his wacky side and how he reacts to being teased by someone younger than him. Trucy's relationship with Phoenix gives us insight into what drove Phoenix on in the years he spent disbarred. To flip the coin for a second, Phoenix and Edgeworth's relationship is one of childhood origin. Meanwhile, Phoenix and Maya were brought together by circumstance and tragedy. How Phoenix reacts to Maya isn't how he reacts to Edgeworth. How Edgeworth reacts to Phoenix isn't how he reacts to Larry. I wouldn't be aware of the different sides of these characters if another character didn't exist, which is why the relationships between these characters are so important. Without them, we wouldn't know as much about the characters as we currently do. Oftentimes I hear people describe these characters and it's generally something vague, like she has a strong sense of justice and she's cute, and they'll go into their backstory and why it makes them so strong. While backstory does provide insight into why a character is the way they are, they don't always necessarily add layers to the character's personality. I'm not a fan of Athena, that much should be obvious, but I think there's a lot more to her than just having a strong sense of justice, because that can be applied to anyone. Having a tragic backstory isn't something exclusive to Apollo. Having a strong sense of justice isn't exclusive to Athena. They're all vague descriptions of what I believe to be characters with a lot more depth and personality than what people are currently saying. Without Pearl, we don't get to see that side of Maya trying to be strong for someone younger than her. Without Maya, we don't get to see how Phoenix would react to having an assistant and dealing with taking care of a young adult. Just for a second, think back to Turnabout Sisters when you were investigating without Maya and it was just Phoenix. Imagine that, but for the whole series. It would feel empty. Maya's perky personality brings out a different side to Phoenix that wasn't shown in the first two cases. Her character serves to open a new layer to Phoenix's character and give him someone to bounce off of and loosen up with. These relationships are key and should be cherished. Remove one and some of these characters just plain wouldn't be who they are. And that can be something as simple as Edgeworth and Gumshoe, to Emma and Clavier, to even, as I said earlier, Apollo and Spark Brusher. Each character can contribute something to another, even a side character. An interesting character has multiple sides to them that are brought out through interacting with different characters. In the same breath, a boring character will generally react in the same way to everything and everyone. There's no real layers there, just being a good or bad person, and that's as far as their character goes. With that said, let's address the elephant in the room: shipping. The idea of romantic relationships in Ace Attorney. This is certainly one of those sensitive topics, so I was really worried I was going to mess this one up. Let's start with the canonical one. First thing I'm going to establish, Ace Attorney isn't a romance story, nor is it trying to be. Is that we never see a romantic relationship flesh out and grow before us. Think about it. Phoenix and Dahlia were an established relationship. Me and Diego were an established relationship. Ron and Desiree were an established relationship. Even something as simple as Gumshoe's crush on Maggie was just established. And by established, I mean we were told and that was it. At that point, we were just forced to accept it. Ace Attorney doesn't waste time trying to tell a love story. It uses couples as a convenience for a case. And when it does try to show us how love came about, it doesn't really work. Love and couples have, and in my opinion should be, only used as a means of convenience for a case. And my logic for this is quite simple. If it doesn't affect a case or a character's actions within a case in any way, then why should it exist? And that's moving on to something a lot more scary: personal ships. And you kinda don't want to offend anyone when you talk about this. I'm willing to bet over half of our community is ships or has shipped at some point in the past. Maybe you haven't, but the guy next to you probably has. And there's nothing wrong with that, and I'll admit this much: I have shipped in the past, but I've grown past it. And that's not to say when you reach my level, you won't have to ship, but it's more so me just saying I don't feel the need to anymore, given my stance on Ace Attorney. I love these characters, but I also love their regular relationships. Adding romance between them would sort of just ruin that for me. Like, imagine if we had an interaction between Maya and Phoenix that played out like this. But then when they're in a relationship, it plays out like this. I know that's an exaggeration, but I want to make something clear. I have no problem with shipping. If you want to ship, that's cool. Sometimes I think we take things too far, but I'm ultimately fine with it. If you think Maya and Phoenix should be in a romantic relationship, then that's fine by me. If you think Gumshoe and Edgeworth should be in a romantic relationship, then you know, it's whatever. In any series with characters, people are going to ship. There's nothing I can do to prevent that. It's just something natural that's gonna happen. Initially when I was planning this video, I was actually gonna dedicate it to shooting down certain ships that I personally never understood. But I gave myself some time to think, and I realized something. Shipping isn't offensive, and people shouldn't be called out for their own fantasy, because that's what I see shipping as: fantasy. And to me, that's okay. Just because it isn't my thing doesn't mean it can't be someone else's, and the series isn't against it. Otherwise we wouldn't have Pearly shipping Phoenix and Maya. Who's to say someone isn't writing a fanfiction about Apollo getting with Lana and Emma? Oh my god. Now, while I have history with the concept of shipping, I personally don't do it. Mainly because I like the relationship we have now and I don't really want to see them change. But that's not to say someone else wouldn't be. It's understandable that with such a diverse range of characters, people would be drawn to ship. The characters bring out unique sides of each other, and while a romantic relationship certainly would be different, I'm personally not all that interested in that stuff. But that's not to say someone else wouldn't be. It's understandable with such a diverse range of characters, people will be drawn to ship. And they should feel free to do that, but me, it's just not my thing. Relationships are important because they give us a new perspective, a new way of looking at a character and how they react to different people. We wouldn't know as much as we do. Take a character like Francisca. She treats Phoenix the way she does because she has an inferiority complex. Her father paid more attention to Edgeworth than her, and hearing how Edgeworth lost to Phoenix, she saw him as something to surpass, something to cement herself as superior to Edgeworth. Through characters like Phoenix and Edgeworth existing, we get insight into her jealousy, pride and competitive nature. We begin to understand the character through her relationship with others. Now imagine for a second if this was all romanticized. Instead of being an inferiority complex, they made Francisca fall in love with Edgeworth and blame Phoenix for letting him die. It doesn't have the same effect, does it? It becomes more about love than the actual character. All the ideas of pride, inferiority, heritage and envy are all substituted for the simple concept of love. I'd like to think there's more to relationships than that. I like to believe the reason Phoenix is so protective of Maya is because he doesn't want to lose a friend. That they're two characters brought together by circumstance, and don't want to lose each other. Not just because they're friends, but because they both already know what it feels like to lose someone important to them. Phoenix was specifically instructed to take care of Maya by Mia. and that the last will of his mentor that saved him, he'll do so to the best of his ability. Or, Phoenix loves Maya, pick your poison. Relationships aren't all cut and dry, and not all of them have to be romantic. Even if we're to go back to the character of Francisca, he also branches off onto Maya in serving as a way to showcase how useless Maya felt. Maya and Francisca are the same age. Maya comments on how Francisca looks down on her, despite being the same age as her. It reinforced the recurring idea that Maya felt useless throughout the trilogy. Notice how all of this could be simplified to just Maya loves Francisca. I'm not saying that there can't be love in Ace Attorney, but I do believe platonic relationships have a lot more room for depth and exploration, and simplifying motivations to simply love belittles a lot of that. And even characters driven by love as a motive in the series have more layers to them because of this. Godot doesn't kill Elise to save Maya. In the same token, he doesn't do it only to get solace for Mia. He also does it because he wants to play hero. He sees a murder plan in the letter and puts it back. It wasn't enough that Phoenix caught Red White, because he wanted to do it. According to him, it was something that he had to do, adding more layers to the motive than simply love. So to close out this video, I want people to play a game. Think about a main character in Ace Attorney, then think about a character they interacted with, and think about whether that relationship showed a different side to either character. That could be something as simple as Phoenix and Mo the Clown to Francisca and Larry. It'd be immature for me to shamelessly attack some ships, and I'm glad I didn't. Shipping is a big part of this community, and I think there are many legitimate reasons for shipping certain couples. But I'll also say this, it's easier to say love, but it's more rewarding to see something more. Relationships. They certainly are complicated, but with each new one formed, you'll learn more about yourself and how you react to different people, and that can be platonic or romantic. And Ace Attorney's full of them, and feel free to tell me which one's your favourite. It doesn't have to be romantic, but it can be. With that said, thank you guys for watching, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I'm the Storyteller and I'll see you around.
With nothing to say, but I